Thanks for staying with us. Before we go ahead, Wike had something to say?
Yes, so please, Nima has rights. Nima has rights, yeah.
Last case.
When do you think you
Pick
should be
your
eating
case
rice?
now.
Under the
Why
tree.
can't pick your case?
Let us review the papers.
Please, Nima has rights. I don't know.
Let's not start with the nation. Let's start with the nation. This guy is Tuesday. Let's be serious. Akeredolu not going back on plan to arm Amotekun. Don't plunge Nigeria into crisis, can Sultan warn religious leaders? Federal government reverses order urging VCs to reopen the varsities. 500,000 Nigerians await repatriation from Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. Tinubu Shetima joint ticket best for women. Atiku bypasses Wike allies, names Saraki Oyinlola as advisors. And bandits kill 3, kidnap 22 in Kaduna communities. Okay.
Yeah, so I will talk about the wife of the APC presidential candidate, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, at the Asiwaju Women Cooperative Society dialogue yesterday. She was represented by Chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Diaspora, Mrs. Tolulokpe Akondi-Shadipe, and she was just saying that the senator sentiment was that the candidacy of her husband and his running mate, Shetima, is very important for women representation. She says that both of them really stand for women empowerment. She gave examples of her husband as governor and all the things that he's done for women. She said he's mentored scores of women, provided economic empowerment for women, brought about the mainstreaming of women, not only in economics, but in the political sphere. She says that he's not only a political, team player, but also at home. You can see that for her as the wife and a three-time senator, at the National Assembly, it shows his commitment to empowering women, and so does Shetima. Shetima too has a track record of wanting to make sure that there's proper representation of women. And she just says women are very important in politics generally. They're there from the very beginning, the voting and everything. And these two people are very aware of our power and are willing to make sure that we're incorporated in the whole process.
Governor Akeredolu of Ondo State has reiterated that Amotekun must carry weapons. He was saying this during the personal parade yesterday in Ondo. He says that the weapons, which will be backed by law, so he's not going against the law, will be backed by law, will be used to fight those who are termed as marauders, committing crimes against humanity, especially within the region of his state. He said that the establishment of the security outfits by the subnationals was necessary and indispensable. And he said that the Amotekun Corps must be given the tools to carry out their pivotal, indispensable duties. He questioned the fact that the Katsina state government were displaying the AK-47 to their security outfits, and it's important that he also is able to. But I'm just wondering that why is he speaking alone? There should be other governors echoing this and supporting this, because it's not, Amotekun is not just for Ondo State, yes. The entire Southwest. So other governors within that region should also support what he's saying.
Him. Other governors have spoken up in support of him, but I won't say he's doing well for being so consistent on what he believes. And,
yes. And I guess because
I cannot understand why you would allow the Katsina state government
security
display their own AK-47. You're not allowing these ones.
Yeah.
It's two.
It's two systems, one country.
Yeah.
Okay, another story in the nation.
Federal Commissioner at the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, Miss Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, was speaking to the NAN, that's the Nigerian Agency of News Agency of Nigeria, at the UN General Assembly 77 session happening in the US recently, and she was talking about how we have 500,000 awaiting displaced persons in Chad, Cameroon, and they are awaiting repatriation to Nigeria. She said they're in this Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, these three countries, and that they've been bringing them back in batches. There's 1,000 people that are awaiting repatriation presently, and that all of that will be done in accordance with the Presidential Committee on Repatriation in the Northeast, and they'll be done before the end of the tenure of Mr. President. So I'm wondering how many days remain, but I wonder how they will successfully do repatriation of that 500,000 person. I also wonder where the data is and what they are relying on. So I read the story, Sha. That's what she was speaking of on at the...
Okay, moving on to the Punch. 24 hours to campaign. INEC can Sultan wants party supporters against violence. Picture here again of Governor Akeredolu. Amotekun insists on arms. I mean, I like the way he is in his ensemble. Very nice. Sikh sexagenarian disowns family, dies in Lagos apartment. Ogun communities lament 100-year darkness. Electricity projects rot. ICPC sets up committee to manage forfeited assets. Atiku names Saraki, Ayim other special advisors. Groups demand sanction as power collapses within 7th time. And the federal government reverses after varsity's reopening order. ASU adamant. Okay, which story are we starting with?
Yeah, so... Okay.
Let me start with the Sikh sexagenarian. Her name was Rose Akman. She... Apparently, according to her neighbors, she disowned her family and then she fell ill. And she had arthritis and then she got a stroke. She couldn't walk. So they took it in turns to take care of her, change her diapers. And then she would, then a week before she died, they took her to the hospital and the Bagada General Hospital said that they didn't have space. So they now took her to a private hospital. Those ones asked for her family. They said they didn't know her family members, so they said they couldn't admit her. They took her home. Then the person that was her turn to clean her that day went there and she was dead. That one ran to the police station, so that you will not say. And the police came. They took her. They've taken her corpse to the morgue, but her family have now come.
Okay.
And they said, "Where were you all this time?" You know. Her husband left her 10 years ago. Very, very sad story. Very sad story, especially for these parts. But I love the way the neighbors rallied around her.
Yeah.
Support her. Really sad.
Yes. The national grid collapsed again yesterday.
Yes, so
did it
all of us
affect you?
were affected. Yes,
yeah,
it affected me.
Anyway, everybody is screaming and shouting. So they said this is the 7th time that it has happened in 2022 alone. So according to the report, it's saying that power consumer groups have called for sanctions against the operators and firms culpable for the incessant grid collapse that has characterized the Nigeria's electricity system since this year. They said that on Monday, the power generation on the grid had risen to a peak of 4,180 megawatts, and then on Sunday, it dropped to a little above 3,713 at 6 a.m. before crashing to about 80 megawatts yesterday. So various power distribution companies, confirmed this. At the time, they reached out to their consumers, their clients, saying that this had been caused by the national grid collapse. But at the time that they reached out, they hadn't heard, specifically also that what has happened and how long this will take and what the situation is.
This is what the Minister for Power had to say about that. He said that, the grid has never collapsed. He said that what happened were system disturbances. He says that it is mischievous and misleading for anyone to say Nigeria has experienced grid collapses 5 times this year. That, what we have experienced are pockets of national grid system disturbances, and in all, each lasted for just about 30 minutes, and the grid was restored to normalcy instantly, is words. But for what we are experiencing in the past 2 weeks, I'm not finding it funny. I am under a disco. I used to be proud, but now it's difficult to get...
Disco now.
Eco.
We have to go on a break.
It's difficult to get 6 hours of power.
This is what they say. You say tomato and I say tomato.
I'm telling you. Let's go on a break. When we come back to continue with the reviews, stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. We're still reviewing The Punch. So, Nima had a story?
Yes,
Punch?
I have the 500... sorry. The several communities,
that was a nation.
The several communities in Ogun State who say they've been in darkness for 100 years. That they've never had power. And the communities are listed. There's so many. Alagbada, Fayoyi, Ajegunle, Iripa, 1, Iripa 2, Abule, Babanla, Sunwa, Ajegunle. There's so many. All these communities in Yewa, North local government area, said that they've never had power in 100 years. And there's a World Bank electrification project in their area that has been abandoned. And this would have, sort of assisted them to getting power. That's the basis of the story. Simple and short.
100 years.
And that, no, you forgot to say they brought the thing in 2007,
Yes,
saying that they wanted to
World Bank project.
So everyone was excited, and then they didn't. Since that 2007 till now, they are still in darkness.
Okay, so major stakeholders, INEC, CAN, Sultan, and many others have warned party supporters to avoid violence during the coming elections. By tomorrow, officially, the game starts towards 2023. And then INEC is saying, let me read specifically from Yakubu, the chairman of INEC, Mahmoud Yakub, said that abusive and slanderous words could provoke violence during the campaigns, and we must avoid that. He added that abusive, intemperate, slanderous, or base language or innuendos designed or likely to provoke violence, reactions, or emotions shall not be employed during the elections and would not be allowed. He further reiterated his position during the sensitization to ensure that they're going to have a free and fair election. That nobody should, we should just know that we have a free and fair election. But ensure that we should reduce violence, not even have violence at all. I think this is also reiterated by Governor Sowolu during the NIREC meeting. That was the Nigerian Interreligious Council. They had a meeting in Lagos yesterday where they had to come to sit down together and say, listen, we are religious leaders. We're not going to allow all these negativity, I'm paraphrasing right now, that people are using the religion to divide. So I think it's clear that we must all uphold a sanity during this period of elections, and let us avoid slanderous words against each other. Okay, let's move on quickly now to Daily Sun. 2023 APC presidential campaign crisis widens. ASU FG makes U-turn on resumption order. Blackout as national grid collapses again. Bandits threaten to kill newborn mother sisters if 50 million naira ransom is not paid within 48 hours. 2023 again, Obi gets Pan-Yoruba group's endorsement. 2023 polls INEC to deploy cumbersome measures to determine winners, call for issue-based campaigns. Nnamdi Kanu's release crucial to peace in Southeast, says APC chief. And Atiku storms Enugu as Southeast receives Okowa as Igbo son today. Right, which story are we starting with?
I have this really sad, heartbreaking story. So it's about 3 sisters that were kidnapped in July 17th this year. They said they were kidnapped in Mando, that's the outskirts of Kaduna. They had gone to their mother and they were taking care of their sick mom. And bandits came and took them away, 3 of them. One of them was heavily pregnant at the time she was kidnapped. The brother said that since then they've been in talks with the kidnappers, who at first had asked for, you know, they asked for 100 million at first, and they said that they were not able to raise that. They're poor people. This is not an amount of money that they can raise. Anyway, they've reduced the amount all the way down to 50 million. They said they have sold everything that they own, and all that they can give, and all they have gathered is 6.5 million. They spoke to the bandits, and the bandits say that they should not call them again, and that if they do not give them 50 million by the end of tomorrow, they would kill the sisters and the newborn child. The newborn was born in captivity. They said no medicine, no any health intervention since, and that, you know, they've just been left to the elements. He said he was on the phone with his sisters. They were all crying because he said this is all they have been able to raise, and asking governments to
They said they're asking governments, well-meaning Nigerians, churches, everybody, because the first money they asked for was 140 million. Then 100. Now they've reduced it to 50. They said their leader is about to leave the camp. So they need the money before the leader leaves the camp. Very
so sad.
That's like when you catch these guys, you just kill them. Don't do this trial and going for trial. Just shut them dead.
I met a lady who lives in Kaduna, and she's lived in Kaduna all her life. She's Yoruba, but she lives in Kaduna now. She's a fan of the show. And she says how dangerous Kaduna is now.
Southern Kaduna?
Go to Kaduna.
And, you know, they knock on your doors. They really, especially for the Christians.
Did you read the part where
really sad.
Kidnap kingpin arrested, that when he was paraded, when he said he didn't know his gang were involved in kidnapping? He said he didn't know that they were involved in kidnapping.
Right. Okay, so the former vice president of Nigeria, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who is also the presidential candidate for the PDP, will be at the Southeast in Enugu today. He'll be visiting. They're going to have a consultation and sensitization ahead of the elections start, the campaign that's starting tomorrow. And he will be officially presenting Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, his running mate, to the Southeast PDP chapter. You know, so according to them, they will be welcoming him as their son, officially. It says that he's coming home to facilitate with his own kinsmen. Sources reveal that Atiku deliberately scheduled the stakeholders meeting obviously because the campaigns will start, and the idea is really to gather the Southeasterners under the PDP party to accept Okowa as one of their own, as before this campaign starts officially tomorrow. Any other story nobody took? Okay, let's move on now to Vanguard. Let's find a story we've not taken. 2023 presidency, Yoruba elders split over Obi and Tinubu. 2023, guard your utterances. FG Sultan Khan Sanwo-Olu tells Nigerians. Strike, FG makes U-turn on Obi opening of varsities. Pipeline surveillance contract. All stakeholders should work together for Niger Delta, says Edwin Clark. Tinubu begins campaigns with prayers. Peace talks in Abuja tomorrow. 2023, INEC, NBC, others reroute Act 1 against anti-peace activities. Ex-servicemen storm Defense Ministry. Protest on paid benefits. 2023, consider mental fitness of candidates. And bandits kill 3, kidnap 22, snatch bikes in Benin Gwari in council. Okay, which story are we doing?
So, the Sultan of Sokoto, Muhammadu Abubakar, who is also the leader of the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, was at the third quarter meeting of the Nigeria Interreligious Council that I held in Victoria Island yesterday. Also in attendance was the governor of Lagos, the SGF, the Secretary to the Federal Government, was represented, and the president of CAN, that's the Christian Association of Nigeria, Daniel Oko, also was present. And they were talking about, you know, how volatile this season that we're going into now, pre-election or election campaign season, will be. And they're asking Nigerians to not only be careful about, you know, how they comport themselves, but guard, you know, their utterances from incitive and, you know, all sorts of comments at this time. I totally agree with everybody because the Sultan was saying the same thing. The current president was agreeing with him. Other parties that were in attendance were taking and agreeing with him in different ways. But, you know, they were all saying the same thing, and I agree with them. At this time, this is when we should be more careful about any of such utterances and guard what we're saying.
Yeah. So yesterday, the retired military personnel stormed the Ministry of Defense. They were protesting non-payment of their security debarment allowance, which they call SDA, and they threatened not to leave the place until government addresses their plight. So these ex-soldiers, under the aegis of retired members of the Nigerian Armed Forces, REMENAF, that's REMENAF, and the Coalition of Concerned Military Veterans, CCV, they said that they had in January, you know, protested and picketed the Ministries of Finance, Defense, and the National Assembly so that, you know, the allowances could be paid, and that the President heard them and he approved the payment of the debarment allowances. But they said up till today, the Ministry of Defense hasn't done anything. They're also alleging that the Minister of Defense is the one holding on to these monies, that he doesn't seem to have any empathy for their plight. And so they had come with their mats and they were willing, even in the rain, to sleep over until they have been addressed.
Okay, that's all we can take on Front Page Review. When we come back, we take a part 2 of the our hot topic yesterday, which is about the kidnap kingpin, the updates on that. Stay with us, we'll be right back.